Every aspirant who's preparing for AOR exam or for any exam for that matter should have that special ability of everyday practicing equanimity. भगवद गीता में जब बोलते हैं सुख दुखे समय कृत्वा लाभा लाभो जय जयो. Who is an advocate on record? क्राइटेरिया क्या है कि कोई इस एग्जाम को लिख भी सके?
Advocate on record is somebody who can do filing in the Supreme Court. Besides that, you have to be equally familiar with the Supreme Court rules. You have to obtain a 1-year certificate from an advocate on record.
Lawyers are not just any professionals working to earn livelihood. They are social engineers constantly working to transform this world to make it a better place to dwell and to ensure that justice is upheld and the rule of law survives. Logical morning, everyone. Welcome to Vidhigya podcast, and today's topic is how to become an advocate on record. How to be an AOR. Today I have with me Mr. Yashraj Singh Bundela. He's advocate on record at Supreme Court of India with 10 years of roaring practice at Supreme Court, clearing this exam. He also happens to be a person who's standing counsel for the government of Madhya Pradesh at Supreme Court. So having Mr. Yashraj Singh Bundela for today's podcast. Yashraj, at this point in time, I would want to know from you that there are so many people who aspire to start a flourishing practice at Supreme Court and want to write this exam and become an advocate on record. Today, your presence here in this podcast would add a lot of value to them. So my first question is for everyone to know, who is an advocate on record?
Basically, advocate on record is somebody who can do filing in the Supreme Court.
Correct.
The term advocate on record in itself signifies that anything that is going on record in the Supreme Court will go through an advocate who is an advocate on record.
Correct.
So therefore, anything that is to be filed in Supreme Court, that will go with the signature of an advocate on record. And it is his responsibility. He is accountable for anything that is being placed on record in the Supreme Court. So this is what an advocate on record is.
A lot of people have this myth and they don't know what an advocate on record is. General notion is Supreme Court में सिर्फ advocate on record या senior advocate practice कर सकते हैं. The general rule is anyone who's enrolled as an advocate can practice at Supreme Court. But once it comes to filing petitions or filing anything in Supreme Court, for that a qualification is required, and that qualification is being an advocate on record, and it's a process. So I would just want to know what are the required qualifications, criteria क्या है कि कोई इस exam को लिख भी सके, because as I know, writing an advocate on record examination, you need to have certain criteria of eligibility met. So what are those eligibility criteria?
See, this exam is held every year, mostly in the month of June. As a qualification to appear for this examination, first of all, you have to be a registered advocate with any state bar council.
Correct.
Secondly, you should have cleared the All India Bar examination.
Correct.
And thirdly, you should have a practice of at least 5 years. Out of these 5 years, 4 years must be a practice in any court within the jurisdiction of the High Court, Trial Court or Supreme Court. So if you have practiced for 4 years in any part of the India, and thereafter you have to obtain a 1-year certificate from an advocate on record who has been advocate on record for 10 years.
Oh.
So you have to get a training certificate of 1 year from that advocate on record, and thereafter you submit it before the examination committee, and then you become eligible for the Supreme Court advocate on record examination. So basically it's a 4+1. 4 year as an advocate anywhere in the country, 1 year necessarily at Supreme Court under the supervision and guidance of an advocate on record who has practice of at least 10 years.
Correct.
So then you become eligible for this examination. And anytime thereafter, after completing this training, you can appear for the examination after fulfilling all the necessary requirements.
So as I understand, when we talk about the eligibility criteria, it goes this way. A, you have to be an advocate registered with any state bar council.
Yes, yes.
B, you have to clear the AIB exam, which is merely a formality though, but yes, it's an exam which is very much required these days. Then coming third thing, that you should have 5 years of practice, and for this, out of those 5 years of practice, 4 years could be in anywhere in India,
Yes.
but that 1 year should
Yes.
be mandatorily under an AOR with 10 years of experience at Supreme Court, and that 1 year training should be a rigorous training.
Yes.
After obtaining that certificate
Yes.
of training, being trained 1 year at Supreme Court under an AOR,
Yes.
you get to write this exam. That means it was merely an eligibility criteria.
Eligibility criteria.
So, since you've cleared this exam, could you shed some light upon how to prepare for this exam called AOR? What is the pattern of exam, and how should one think about, plan about becoming an AOR? So, first thing is the syllabus and what is covered,
Yes.
pattern.
Basically, you have to understand what this exam is about and how it is conducted. As of now, there are 4 papers in this scheme of advocate on record examination. So, first of all, is the Supreme Court practice and procedure. You have to be familiar with it is expected that you have to be familiar with the Supreme Court practice and the procedures that are adopted. Second is the examination of drafting, pleading and drafting. So in this you are tested with your drafting skills. So within a time frame of 3.5 hours, you have to write the drafts which comes before you. You have to read the drafts, and then you have to answer them according to the question. Basically, you have to write either special leave petitions. Sometimes some applications are also asked. Apart from applications, some writ petitions can be asked. Then counter affidavits. Some special kind of appeals that are filed in Supreme Court that are called statutory appeals. They can be asked in the examination. You may also have to write rejoinder affidavit, original suits in Supreme Court, and certain election petitions that are filed exclusively in Supreme Court, arbitration petitions that are filed exclusively in Supreme Court. So anything that is filed in Supreme Court can be asked in this
There's
examination.
a wide area of such
Yes. So you have to be familiar with those draftings.
That's paper 2.
That's paper 2, yes. And third is it's a leading case. Leading case, or third is basically professional ethics. Third examination is professional ethics, in which you have to answer question relating to the professional integrity, professional ethics, Supreme Court rules that deals with these issues of professional ethics, and Bar Council of India rules, Advocates Acts, Contempt of Court Act. So there are n number of provisions in all these statutes which deals with the ethics pertaining to the advocates, and various practical based questions where you may have to explain as to what you will do in particular set of circumstances if you are called upon to decide in a particular case where there are certain issues relating to professional ethics. Then
Situational based questions.
Situational based question also.
They test you on your
yes,
abilities to the max.
yes. And fourth question paper is in relation to the leading cases. So in leading cases, basically there are certain set of case laws, Supreme Court judgments, which are updated every year, and you have to be familiar with those cases. Out of those cases, you are asked certain questions, and you have to answer those questions. Suppose it may be asked that what is the basic structure of the Constitution in the context of particular judgment that deals with it. So you may have to explain the entire basic structure of the Constitution, giving reference to the various judgments of the Supreme Court. Court may also ask exclusively in relation to the particular case.
Yes.
So
In that context.
So you have to be very thorough with this entire examination pattern. So those who are regular practitioners of the Supreme Court,
I'll just ask you one thing here.
Yes.
So you said there are 4 papers.
Yes.
Paper 1 is?
Paper 1 is Supreme Court Practice and Procedure.
Paper 2?
Paper 2 is legal pleading and drafting. Supreme Court pleading and drafting.
Third paper?
Third paper is professional ethics.
And paper 4?
Paper 4 is leading cases.
Leading case laws. So there are these 4 papers tested. And what is the duration? How much? These are all papers which are subjective, of course, not MCQ based
Yes,
questions.
yes,
So you have to write a lot.
Yes.
So how much time you get to attempt every paper? How many hours?
See, except in legal pleadings and drafting, you get 3 hours to answer all the questions that are given in a particular paper. In leadings and drafting paper, you are given half an hour extra time.
3.5 hours.
Yes, probably because the paper is always too lengthy.
Correct.
You have to read the question paper, factual information that is provided in that, and the law that is provided in that. So you have to construe that, and according to the question, you have to prepare your draft. So this half an hour extra is given in this drafting paper.
Quite pragmatic. So I understand that there are 4 papers, and the duration for 4 papers, for 3 of them is 3 hours, and for drafting,
Yes.
that is basically taking 3.5 hours time is being given, and
Yes,
that
yes.
additional 30 minutes is quite pragmatic to be given.
Yes.
Because it's quite a lengthy paper. So it's
Yes.
generally 3 hours, but for one paper we have 3.5 hours to go. So this is the nature of paper. We have 4 papers. They are papers which are subjective in nature. They test you thoroughly, because this exam is conducted by Supreme Court of India. They test you thoroughly before you being eligible to be AOR. So at this juncture, a question comes to my mind, that if someone is thinking to become an AOR, what would be the right way for that person to prepare for this exam? I mean, these 4 papers, and whom could they refer to? So, to put it simple, if I say that if someone has to crack AOR exam and he has to crack all these 4 papers, what would be the right strategy? What are the suggestive methods that you would suggest anyone?
See, as far as strategy is concerned, everybody devises their own means to clear an examination. But one thing is quite certain, that those who are practicing in Supreme Court, for them it becomes comparatively easier to write this examination and to clear it. Second thing is, you have to be extensively thorough, very much focused as to the things that you have to deal with, because most of the people appear in these examinations while they are practicing.
Correct.
So your time management is very important.
True that.
How much time you are devoting for this paper, everyday preparation. Suppose if you decide that this year I want to appear for this examination, and in last 1 month I will take leave from everything else and I will prepare for this examination and I will clear it. I doubt it. In comparison to that, if you still devote every day 1 or 2 hours in the preparation of this paper for a period of at least a year, then it will become much more easier for you to understand things and to clear this examination.
This is where precisely most of the students go wrong. Most of the lawyers go wrong. Advocates, they go wrong because generally people are of this notion that whenever the exams are around, it's always the vacation time. So a month or 2 months before that, I'll take a complete leave, I'll prepare for the exam, I'll write and I'll clear. But your suggestion is otherwise, that instead doing that, if for a year or more, if you are very clear with your goal that you need to write this exam in June of any year, you should start preparing at least a year or more. Before that.
Yes.
And every day, if you devote 2.5, 3 hours,
Yes.
and if you're able to do that,
Yes.
then you enjoy that power of compounding. Again,
Yes.
that compounds and that becomes more. So it's quite interesting as a strategy when he
And
suggests.
one more thing I would like to add to this, that it not only helps in your preparation for the examination, but it also helps to improve your practicing skills.
Correct.
Because when you are familiar, suppose you are appearing for the Supreme Court Practice and Procedure, then first and foremost thing is that you have to be familiar with all the provisions in the Supreme Court in the Constitution of India that deals with the Supreme Court's jurisdiction.
Correct.
So naturally, you will be more updated as to how these provisions are, what are all they are dealing with, and what are the rights and procedures provided and laid down in the Constitution in relation to the Supreme Court jurisdiction. Besides that, you have to be equally familiar with the Supreme Court rules. They are a complete code in itself in relation to the Supreme Court's practice and procedure. So once you are familiar with the Supreme Court rules, your day-to-day practice will become more comfortable and easier. Then you will be more updated and more precise in your dealing when you are practicing in Supreme Court. So and you would be more confident when you are aware as to how a particular thing is done in the Supreme Court. Similarly goes for the drafting. If you are devoting your time for the preparation of this AOR examination, and if you are preparing for this drafting paper, and every day if you decide that I will at least draft one petition every day, or at least I will go through the necessary ingredients of a particular draft. Correct. Of at least one petition or writ petition or application or anything, then every day you are learning a new way of drafting a particular thing. So naturally your drafting skills will increase. Then there are a bunch of 50-60 cases that you have to deal with in relation to the drafting paper, in relation to the leading question paper. So those 50-60 questions, those 50-60 case laws that are provided for the preparation of this examination of the leading cases, they are well thought judgments. Each judgment in itself carries a great deal of significance and weight in relation to the rights perspective, in relation to the very significant issues that comes to the Supreme Court and on which generally Supreme Court has to deal, and in which the jurisdictional issues, in which substantive law issues, in which the procedural perspectives, procedural issues, various interpretation of laws in relation to the civil, criminal, commercial, and other aspects of law are dealt with. So when you go through these judgments and at least their notes that are provided in those judgments, then you are familiar with those 60-65 most necessary Supreme Court judgments. So naturally you become a much more better advocate when you prepare for this examination. And when you prepare for the professional ethics, naturally a practice without ethics is not of any use.
Correct.
If you want this, as an advocate before court, you are an officer of law. So if you are not carrying the professional ethics elements in your practice, probably you are failing in your duty before the court and before the justice. So that is most important paper probably. Generally, that much weightage is not given to this paper at times, but I think that is one of the most significant paper. And when you prepare for it, a lot many questions, it gives you food for thought as to how you should shape your practice. Yes.
So I got few very important pearls of wisdom coming in. Number one, that if you have to prepare for this exam, you're not only preparing for AOR exam, but also it will help you grow your practice at Supreme Court better. That will enhance you as a practitioner. Number two, if you are anytime planning this exam to be taken, don't have this strategy that down the line 2 months break I'll take and I'll do it. It's better that every day you start devoting time, because you're clear from a particular time that you have to take this exam. So from year or two before, you just start devoting 2 to 3 hours every day, and you'll finally ending up doing better than those who are taking 2 months break and doing so. And the third and the most important point is something that is the foundation values that we teach student at Vidhigya, that you have to be an advocate with spine. When you are in the court, you're officer of the court, and you have to be an advocate who's an advocate with spine, and that can happen only when you understand ethics. And the beauty of ethics is they lie in heart or they lie nowhere. So when it comes to ethics, I feel like it's always a pleasure talking to you, understanding your perspective, and no matter what we talk, finally we boil down to certain discussion which would intend go philosophical, but the objectivity of this session would not allow. But the biggest lesson that anyone could learn today from Yashraj in this session is nothing but if you have to practice, be a person who uphold integrity and ethics. So what would be your final message? I mean, there's so many messages, but what would be your final message for someone who's just started his practice and who aspire to write an AOR exam? That advice, that piece of advice from you.
Most important thing is the perseverance. You have to have patience and strength to work hard, to face success and failure equally.
Equanimity, we call it when we discuss.
Yes. Because every day in practice, you in certain cases you get success, in certain cases you get defeats. But it's not all in your hand. But when you maintain this temperament of accepting the hard truths, whatever way they are coming, then you become much more composed and much more strong to be a practitioner in any court of law. So I think that is one and foremost thing. And the second thing is the practice is not a means only to earn money. It is certainly much more than that.
Indeed true.
When you are representing somebody's life, somebody's entire life's savings, his all earnings are dependent on your way of hard work, your precision, your dealing with a case, your attachment to the case. So it's a very big responsibility, and you should do justice to that responsibility. Each service, each profession is a duty in one way or the other. So similarly, practice is also a duty. It is through practice also you can serve your nation, you can serve your society equally as a soldier serving his country on the borders.
That's the most beautiful way you could have ended this session, and I know that for a matter of fact, since childhood you were fascinated to go for defense, but God has chosen you to be at Supreme Court, High Court, and be a part of this justice delivery system. Two most brilliant things that everyone should know from this session with Yashraj today. Number one, lawyers are not just any professionals working to earn livelihood. They are social engineers constantly working to transform this world to make it a better place to dwell and to ensure that justice is upheld and the rule of law survives. Second, and the most lovely thing with which we'll end this talk today was every aspirant who's preparing for AOR exam or for any exam for that matter should have this special ability, or any human being as well should have that special ability of everyday practicing equanimity. वो भगवत गीता में जब बोलते हैं सुख दुखे समय कृत्वा लाभा लाभो जय जयो, और साहिर लुधियानवी ने एक बहुत अच्छा गाना लिखा है, उसमें एक बात बोली है, वो गम और खुशी में फर्क ना महसूस हो जहाँ मैं दिल को उस मुकाम पर लाता चला गया. So I think this was a wonderful candid conversation, and indeed I think a lot of people who are listening would be great beneficiaries. And yes, last की जो 2 points है ना, lawyers are social engineers, number 1, and number 2, जिंदगी एक युद्ध है, लड़ना ज़रूरी है, लगे रहना ज़रूरी है, perseverance ज़रूरी है, और सबसे ज़रूरी ये बात है कि जो भी आए उसको भगवान का प्रसाद मान के आप लगे रहो. Sooner or later you will reach where you should be, and equanimity is the keyword. So that's all from our end, and in this Vidhigya podcast, it was wonderful having Mr. Yashraj Singh Bundela, and I think today you sharing your valuable time with us would have benefited many. Thank you so much. It was wonderful having you.
Thank you, Bahul.